In Ohio Country Today, brought to you in part by the following: Koenig Equipment, Allen Davis Insurance Agency, True Point Cooperative, the Ohio Soybean Council, the Ohio Corn Growers, and Poet Biorefining. Hello again, everyone. Big Dan Wilson alongside of Gary Jackson, and we're in the heart of Highland County, better known as Rocky Fork State Park, Gary. And this is a great episode for us here in Highland County. It's going to be a couple of interviews that we've been looking forward to for a long time.
I've never water skied, but I might want to come back. That lake is really inviting.
Most definitely. We have a couple stories here from the state park, but more importantly, we were able to hook up with a good friend of our show and somebody that we've known for a few years here. Happens to be Mayor of Hillsboro.
That is Drew Hastings. You might know him as a mayor or a farmer or a stand-up comedian. He's still all three, but he's getting a lot done in the Hillsboro area. Yeah,
no question about it, and we're going to have that fine story with him. We're going to tell you a little bit more about Rocky Fork State Park and Hillsboro and Highland County, and those will be our feature stories for this week on In Ohio Country Today. We'll be back with those stories and more this week in Ohio Country Today. Are you looking to buy or sell farmland? Then work with a company that works for you. Ron Spencer Real Estate. Founded in 1975, Ron Spencer specializes in farmland, agricultural, and commercial real estate. Check him out on the web for farm listings in Allen, Auglaize, Hancock, Hardin, Putnam, Paulding, Mercer, Van Wert counties, and more. With 3 locations to serve you, Ron Spencer Real Estate at rsre.com. That's rsre.com.
This is Ken Koenig from the Koenig Care Minute, reminding you that if you need parts, service, or product support, or that new equipment, don't hesitate to call us at any one of our locations or visit us on the website at koenigequipment.com.
I'm Terry McClure, a fifth-generation soybean farmer. Farming can be tough, but we have the Ohio Soybean Council investing farmers' dollars to find new uses for soybeans. Their research helps develop better beans for livestock, poultry, and for people. It also helps create new products like soy-based cleaning supplies and paint cartridges. Plus, cleaner burning soy biodiesel reduces our dependence on foreign oil. Soybeans are Ohio's #1 agricultural export. To learn more, visit soyohio.org.
Koenig Equipment for quality, reliability, and great support. For large ag, small ag, and turf, or any application, you can count on our 100-plus years of experience every time you get behind the wheel. Koenig Equipment stands behind our products with responsive repair and maintenance. At Koenig, you choose the maintenance program that works best for you, designed for your operation. Koenig is there to ensure your equipment runs smoothly all season long. Think Koenig Equipment.
I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. I was there until probably I was 18, 19, went to Cincinnati, Ohio. I was there for another 15, 18 years. So I've always been in Southern Ohio, pretty much. And then I lived in New York City, I think, for a year or so. I lived in San Francisco a year or so. And then I spent 13 years in Hollywood, in Los Angeles. And that was up until I was 50. But yeah, until I moved out here, I'd never lived rural whatsoever. My whole reason for coming out here was I wanted to get out of Los Angeles. I never cared for Los Angeles. I'm a Midwest guy, and so I knew that the best thing to do that would interest me would be to be in an environment that I was completely unfamiliar with and learn from. So I said, you know what, why don't we go rural? I've never lived rural. Let's go and live rural. And so I put all my stuff in a U-Story, U-Lock it, and put it there for the summer. And then I just drove around Southern Ohio for about a month. And I happened to stop uptown Hillsboro one day, and I was in a diner having coffee, and I looked in the paper, and this farm was for sale. And I said, well, this looks nice. Let's go out and look at that. Came out here, bam, put an offer in on it and bought it. And then what happened was, I really had no idea. Of course, I didn't know what I was doing. And I bought the farm because it had a view, and it had a great old barn, and it had some land. And then I had to decide what I was going to do with it. I had no idea what I was going to do with it. And so then I started researching, looking into, well, do I look at sheep? Do I look at goats? Do I look at cattle? What do I look at? And again, I'm kind of a curious guy, so I would just go around and I would talk to all the old farmers around here. And I would ask them questions and pester them to death. And then I finally kind of settled on some cattle, and, and kind of the rest was history. So would I consider myself kind of a Green Acres, Oliver Douglas guy? I think initially when I got the farm, and probably that lent itself to a lot of humor, yeah, I would say so, because I was pretty clueless. As I say, just when I think I had farming down pat, a couple of months ago, I chased a newborn calf 300 yards across my field before I figured out it was a black hefty bag blown across. I ended up with cattle because most guys around here were doing cattle, and it was the path of least resistance. And the owner of the local livestock stockyards up here, Union Stockyards, kind of took a liking to me, and he really helped me out, kind of, you might say, mentored me a little bit, and he would help me not get stuck, and with buying up some cattle. And then I had to ask a lot of questions. I would do everything from I would read the Farm Bureau newsletters, and I would talk to other farmers, and I would read the Ohio State University Extension stuff that was coming out, and I just kind of pick things up. And, there's nothing I wouldn't ask. I really believe in the old adage, there's no such thing as a stupid question. I mean, the first thing I'd ask, I'd see an old farmer who was missing a finger or two. And the first thing I'd say is, how did you lose those 2 fingers? Because I don't want that to happen to me. And some people would say, oh my gosh, you shouldn't ask them that. That's kind of maybe personal. But no, they'll be the first to tell you, well, you don't ever want to do this, or, oh, I lost it doing that. And so that's what I would do. I would ask them everything. What's that piece of equipment do? Why do you do this that way? And I would just pester them to death. I've always been curious, and I'm not gonna figure out anything new here. I mean, farming community, they've been, for some things, there's a reason why things have been done a certain way for 100 years. People are very disconnected anymore from their food. They're disconnected from nature overall. And I think overall, the farming community really, for the most part, a segment of people that really, they just like to be left alone and do their job. The problem is society isn't going to leave them alone. And so they kind of have to, in a way, do some outreach, and explain a little bit what they're doing. Because you have a lot of people putting demands on farmers as to, what they're doing, why they're doing it. And, I think there's a lot of just misunderstanding. But that's why I'm real big on agritourism. I think agritourism, recently as mayor, I commissioned a study, one of the few, I think, in the state of Ohio that's been done. In fact, Dave Daniels, director of agriculture, saw it, and he was pretty impressed with it, I think. And I think agritourism, which a lot of people still think of as, well, those are corn mazes, aren't they? Now, there's a lot more to them, everything from micro distilleries to you name it. But I think agritourism is one way, which is kind of a positive way to get soccer moms and people out from the city to, you'd be shocked how many kids have never petted a goat, And you just get them out, and you do a little outreach. And I mean, my dream, I would love to be able for us to have a municipal farm, essentially city of Hillsboro, kind of an agritourism farm, where it's educational and entertainment, and you've got, a calf cam, we have calves being born on these dates, and, and here's how it works with chickens, and, just the whole gamut. Yeah, I mean, basic stuff, but stuff that people from the suburbs of the city would be impressed with. So I was uptown one day, we're about 6 miles out of town here, and I'd go into town all the time, and I own a couple of really into historic old buildings, and I've bought a couple of buildings uptown, and with an eye towards renovating them. And I was walking around with a friend one day, and I said, well, Jiminy Christmas, this town is kind of falling apart. You know, who's running things? Heck, I could do better than this. And that really more or less became my campaign slogan. Hell, I could do better than this. And so I went around and just started talking about small town revitalization and a lot of the things I saw. And the biggest export of a small town in the Midwest and in Ohio, the biggest export of a small town is it's young people. And you know, you want to try to put a stop to that. And you have what I call, but I didn't make it up, it's a term that's out there called the culture of poverty, which seems to be taking more and more root in rural and small towns. And I think that's because some of that stuff is shifting out from urban centers. And I think there's a lot you can do with small towns. I think if you want to keep your small town intact, your community, you really have to fight to do it. I'm all about economic development. And I'll tell you something interesting. If you go to the new malls that they're building now, if you go to the Green, which is up in Dayton, or you go to Easton, which is a big popular mall in Columbus, the trend in the last few years in malls, if you notice, is they're all done outside. And they're built like a small town square. And they're built like a very quaint little small town, except that they're, you know, set up almost kind of Walt Disney style or, you know, Disney World style. But if you stop and think about it, what Easton and Columbus wants to be is small town Hillsboro, or small town Wapakoneta, or small town Marion, or whatever small town in Ohio, because that's what they're trying to sell, because that's what a lot of people kind of harken back to. And I think when you realize that your small town is really in a lot of ways what some of these big cities are marketing, why go to Easton or to the Green in Dayton to get a sense of small town when you can go to the small town? So I'm big on getting our city turned around, getting our buildings renovated, getting stores put back up in them. I mean, I think there's a bit of a backlash to the big box stores. I think there's, people want to shop local more. I think that movement is starting to pick up some steam. So I think there's a lot that can be done. Yeah, we're big on infrastructure. I think in a lot of ways, infrastructure has been kind of kicked down the road and not maintained a lot. And we are really doing a lot to fix that. I believe in running the town like a business. I've been self-employed since I was 18 years old. I think you run a town like a business, and and it's profit and loss, and you try to. The name of the game is try to increase the value of everybody's real estate, the citizens, and there's just a lot of things you can do if you have an eye towards economic development. I see everything through that lens. Does that make sense? Yeah. Just outside of town, we have Rocky Fork Lake State Park, which had a reputation as having bad water quality, but I think that's been rectified a lot in the last couple of years. I think more so than local water quality issues that we have here, which aren't that prominent, we're more affected by the larger water quality mandates and issues, which is really the EPA. I think there's a lot of concern that the EPA and other regulatory agencies, but predominantly the EPA, are go somewhat overboard in their, I would say, zealousness in trying to reach certain goals for water or air quality. I mean, you don't want to go into it all here, but some of the stories you hear about goals that they want you to reach, which are really kind of unattainable or economically unfeasible. And I'm not saying anything that I don't think has been out there already, you know.
Yeah.
California and states, maybe like California, on the West Coast, and that would include Washington, Oregon, they have such a completely different mindset. You know, I'll tell you a perfect example. I entertained and gave a keynote address up near Upper Sandusky a few months ago for a group called Center for Innovative Food Technology. And I was one of the speakers there, and the other speaker there was a vice president of Starbucks, of development, vice president of development for Starbucks. And he flew in from Seattle. And he sits this little plastic bottle of green juice up, and he says, this is how we're going to fight obesity in the Midwest, and this is kale based, and it's got cut up carrots and kale and stuff in it, and it sells for $6, this 16-ounce drink, and we're going to get everybody in the Midwest to go to Starbucks and drink this for lunch, and this is going to make people healthy and get rid of obesity. And I raised my hand and I said, well, that's great, but until you could turn that into the shape of a corn chip and sell it for $1.99, I think you're going to have a lot of trouble. And, you know, I was being a little facetious there. I was being a little humorous, but when you think about it, that's the attitude. And it doesn't matter whether it's animal activists or water quality or health issues like obesity. On the West Coast, they think they know better, and they're going to come in here and they're going to try to tell you, well, we think we know what's best. Drink the green kale stuff that we make and everything will be fine. Well, you know what? I think we've done perfectly fine here for a couple hundred years. I was a guy who never really volunteered to do much of anything most of my life. I didn't really volunteer for much. I didn't do a lot to give of myself to anybody else. And when I took the mayor's job, I thought, you know what? This is my way to give back. I'm going to do 4 years or 8 years, and yeah, it's going to cost me money, which it has, but you know, this is my tour of duty. This is my big volunteer effort, is, you know, to kind of give my time to this whole small town revitalization and mayor's job. And yeah, I would say the comedy showbiz career has suffered because of it, but that's okay. You know, I'm still doing it, and actually I'm doing more corporate shows now. I do a lot of farm and ag shows. In fact, you know, it's so funny that, you know, I started out 25 years ago as a nightclub comedian, you know, with people with drinks in their hand and smoking cigarettes, and me being fairly R-rated and edgy. And now, you know, I just went out to California and did and entertained the Association of Ag Teachers, which was 900 ag teachers in California. So it's funny how it's all shifted, you know.
Having more fun now?
Yeah, I'm having more fun because they're just a great bunch of people, the farm ag community. You know, sometimes I'm doing Farm Bureau stuff, sometimes it's seed companies, sometimes it's cattlemen banquets, whatever. But, you know, and we all tend to be, what I like is, you know, we tend to be on the same page mostly politically, you know. As I say, this country is going to hell in a handbasket, and I'm not even sure we make our own handbaskets here anymore. But it's, no, a good bunch of people. And I really like working for that demographic, if you will, that slice of America.
Water quality is one of the most important topics concerning Ohioans today. So if you own a pond, you'll want to make sure it's in the best shape possible. The Becker Windmill is the answer. Made in Ohio, the Becker Windmill offers you a precision-engineered, high-performance pond aeration system, custom-made for your needs. Avoid fish kill problems, improve water quality, and the satisfaction of doing your part to improve the environment. Call Becker today.
Big Oil presents Mr. Slick and Dummy.
Do you know what the RFS is, dummy? It's a renewable fuel standard. It requires the oil companies to blend renewable fuels with their gasoline.
And that's real bad, right?
Yeah, the big oil, because it means we use less oil and more renewable, dummy.
Why doesn't Big Oil want you to know the RFS is good for America? You're no dummy. Don't let the oil industry treat you like one.
Allen Davis Insurance Agency, with 30 years commitment to the community, providing quality insurance services. Allen is a business owner and an active farmer, and he knows firsthand the pressures of running your farming operation. Call Allen today and ask about coverage for your farm, your vehicles, your equipment, crops, and more. Now with 3 locations to serve you in Wapakoneta, St. Mary's, and Minster. Call 1-800-686-2148. That's 1-800-686-2148.
This Friday, Heather Rogers voted the best flea market in Ohio as we celebrate 60 years with hundreds of vendors, food, fun, live auctions, live bands, and special events. Free parking, free admission. Go to RogersOhio.com. Start your weekend off right. We want to be your Friday night.
This is Ken Koenig from the Koenig Care Minute, reminding you that if you need parts, service, or product support, or that new equipment, don't hesitate to call us at any one of our locations or visit us on the website at koenigequipment.com.
Hello once again, everyone. We are in Hillsboro, Ohio, Highland County, and we're visiting with Gary Abernathy. Gary is the publisher of the Times-Gazette here in Hillsboro. Gary, it's good to have you with us. Understand that you are from this general area?
Yeah, I grew up on a farm not too far out of town, a little bit to the west of Hillsboro, a little 175-acre farm that back when I grew up on it, you could make a pretty good living on that. And it was, everybody should have a chance to grow up on a farm because it was a great way to grow up.
Now, you went away and did your thing for a number of years, and just a few years ago, you had the opportunity to come back.
That's right. I was able to actually be the editor of this newspaper for about 8 years back in the 80s into the early 90s. Went away to a couple of other newspapers and did some politics and government work for a while. About 4 years ago, I had the chance to come back to this newspaper and become the publisher, so it was a real thrill to be able to come back to my hometown again.
What is it? We hear so often that there's such an advantage. It's sometimes emotional, sometimes it just seems like it's in your blood to come back to not only your hometown, but small town America.
I think that's true. I think that it helps you to come back with your eyes wide open again and kind of see it with fresh eyes. I think that if you live in a place your whole life, it's easy to take it for granted. And when you have the opportunity to go away and work at some other places, live in some other places, and then come back to where you grew up, you realize, there's a lot of treasures here, including the people, the ambiance, the quality of life that maybe you take for granted otherwise.
There's a lot of countryside, there's a lot of agriculture around Hillsboro. I suppose that agriculture sort of drives the local economy?
It does. We're definitely an agriculture-based community. Sometimes I think we even take it for granted because it's just there. But, the economy, the money that comes into our local stores, the tax revenue that comes into our county and city coffers, most of it's agriculture-based one way or the other, and so it's extremely important here.
Now, agriculture, of course, has changed vastly over the years. How has it changed here in the Highland County area?
Well, again, I think that like a lot of places, as I mentioned, the farm I grew up on, you probably couldn't even begin to make a living on 175 acres these days. So a lot of it's been, big farmers have taken it over, what we think are big farms, probably 1,000 acres or more is considered pretty big. So that's a change. I think that, what you do have, though, is a lot of support industries here for agriculture. You've got a lot of stores around here that cater to agriculture, everything from the clothing and coats and coveralls and then all the small implements that get sold, like the shovels and the rakes and so on, mowers and equipments. We have a 5-point implement out at the edge of town. We've got Town and Country and another side of town catering to a lot of that. Master Feed Mill, Ventura's. A little cheat sheet actually. Magulac Tires just outside of town that supplies a lot of the tractor tires and things like that. And Premier Feeds. So there's a lot of those that employ a good number of people and again contribute to the economy.
I would suppose too that come fair time, not only the country kids, the kids
Yeah.
that live on farms, but some of the kids here in town, they also get really involved in the fair.
You know, that's exactly right. There are kids who live in town that maybe raise a small animal on a grandparent's farm or an aunt and uncle's farm, in some cases right in town. And the county fair here in this part of the state is still a very big deal. It's probably the biggest event of the year in Highland County. We have a wonderful fairgrounds, one of the nicest fairgrounds in the state, the Highland County Fairgrounds, and they do a great job with that. And every year, you know, it's still one of the counties where all the schools close for the county fair, because the schools go back into session just shortly before the fair. But when the fair rolls around, beginning on Labor Day weekend every year, the schools close for the week, and the kids get to focus on their fair projects.
For more information, Gary, where would they go to find some of that?
Well, you've got the county Highland County website, and of course Times-Gazette.com keeps you up to date on all these things. You have a great Chamber of Commerce, Highland County Chamber of Commerce website, Facebook pages. You want to know more about Highland County and agriculture, check out any of those places.
Gary Abernathy, the publisher of the Times-Gazette, has been our guest. Gary, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Are you looking to buy or sell farmland? Then work with a company that works for you. Ron Spencer Real Estate. Founded in 1975, Ron Spencer specializes in farmland, agricultural, and commercial real estate. Check him out on the web for farm listings in Allen, Auglaize, Hancock, Hardin, Putnam, Paulding, Mercer, Van Wert counties, and more. With 3 locations to serve you, Ron Spencer Real Estate at rsre.com. That's rsre.com.
That's going to do it for this week's edition of In Ohio Country Today. If you'd like more information about today's show, drop us a line. Check us out on the web at inohiocountry.com. That's inohiocountry.com. Have a good day, everybody.